So I will go through. My name is Jonathan Brown. I'm the Secretary of Utilities. I'll be presenting tonight on the 45th project. So as Frank mentioned, we'll please if you can hold questions until the end of the 45th presentation. We'll have a Q&A period. Then I'll turn it over to Steve and he'll give an update on the power. So I'm joined tonight by Tracy Belding, who is our project manager for our redesign consultant, Bassett. And then also from Bassett, I'm joined tonight by Powers, who is the senior arborist. If we go to the next slide. Just quickly want to go over the agenda. Today we want to just go over the project background, the project timeline, share some updates on where we're at in the design, provide some next steps, and then obviously have some time for questions and answers. And really want to point out that this is not our only planned time to be up here in the community, so we don't get all the questions answered now. We have more questions that we want later, but we do plan on showing our faces in the neighborhood again later this summer and the fall. And then we have my email address at the end of the presentation. You can always feel free to reach out to me directly if again you have any questions that come up. So first, just want to share the project timeline. So right now we are in our what we're calling our final design phase. So we're working for it to complete design this year and then start construction. Right now we're anticipating 2026 and lasting up to 2 years. Just included a couple photos there from some previous outreach activities that we've done in the community. Had the chance to join the Food Fest and the Fall Fest and kind of do some tabling sessions. So just wanted to share that we're up here again for another touch point, but this won't be the last time we're out here. So I'll be sharing the project background. The goal of this project really is to be supporting our urban watersheds, and specifically Fauntleroy Creek. So just a little bit of background on the watershed. Fauntleroy Creek is one of our 5 salmon-bearing streams in the city of Seattle. It does have one of our smaller drainage areas, but it does also have a very good spawning habitat out in Fauntleroy Creek Park. Really nice forested area, great habitat for fish. The current issue right now is the creek has to go through 3 roadway crossings to get all the way up to the park at Fauntleroy, the Fauntleroy Park, and 2 of those culverts right now are fish barriers. So just based on the size and the velocity flows that go through them and hydraulic jumps, or the distance the fish need to jump, they are not going to be able to get through. Those 2 are at California Avenue Southwest and 45th Avenue Southwest. So our projects are looking at restoring fish passage. This just shows the project location, so you can see from the map, where the Hall of Fauntleroy is. So the 45th project is down off of 45th, so it's about that direction from where we are right now. So we fully recognize the impact this project is going to have on this community. We get to the Hall and everybody else nearby. So just what are the problems, what are the issues, and what are we trying to solve? Right now, the culvert 145th is almost 100 years old, and it's a 24-inch diameter pipe that's in failing condition. And we also have, as I mentioned, the culvert itself is a complete barrier to fish passage, and then we also have not the most safe maintenance access conditions for our maintenance crews. So we have stairs that go to the upstream side that are not the safest and not the conditions. So we just clamor around it at this point. So that's another one of the goals of our project, is to improve that. So as I mentioned, we need to replace the culvert. Repair of it is not an option. We also need to upsize it to make it passable for fish, and we're considering climate impacts as part of that sizing as well. And we'll as part of that, improving the stream and I guess the area around the stream we call it repairing corridor. We're improving that habitat with the project footprint. So we're going about 100 to 150 feet upstream and downstream of the culvert to kind of just make the channel grading and habitat restoration pieces work within the rest of the context that we're doing. And then I'm going to pass it off to Tracy Belding, who's going to give us a little more detail on the design of this.
close to the mic.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So, the project approach and benefits. John talked about the problem statement. So, you know, we're doing, I guess I want to highlight 4 main components. So, replacing the aging culvert, upsizing for fish passage and to accommodate future climate change impacts. We're doing a lot to improve the stream and corridor habitat, and then, as Jonathan mentioned, improving maintenance access for SQ groups. How are we doing these things? Go to the next slide. First of all, building a new structurally sound culvert to reduce risk of culvert failure and subsequent damage to properties, habitat, infrastructure. So that's kind of one of the main drivers, and we know from the CCTV, from the video inspection of the culvert, it's in really poor condition. As
Sure.
well.
Tracy, could you hold the mic because you keep moving and it's very important. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that.
There we go.
All right.
Close,
Try not to.
close.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not used to doing this with a microphone. So.
What are the captions and the information in the photo?
Oh, okay, good question. So on the upper right is a video capture from the video inspection of the pipe. And that's just an image, and you probably can't really see the detail, but showing that the pipe is pretty in a deteriorated condition. And then the lower right is a photograph of the downstream culvert end, and it's showing that it's mostly plugged out with sediment. So it's a 24-inch diameter pipe, but it tends to get blocked. There's been a few blockages over the last few years, and silt tends to collect in the bottom of the downstream end. So moving on, with state and federal regulations, we do need to provide fish passage anytime we repair or replace the culvert. So this culvert will be much bigger than it is now. We're going from a 24-inch round pipe to a 14-foot wide rectangular section. And that is based on the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife guidelines for designing culverts. But what this will do is make maintenance much easier and probably reduce the frequency of maintenance needed because it'll pass flows and any debris that come down the system. We'll be able to build a natural stream channel within the culvert, so the fish see the same channel inside the culvert as they do outside the culvert. That will reduce the flow velocities and make it easier for fish to pass. And then we'll be removing the 3-foot drop that Jonathan mentioned that is currently the barrier to fish passage. And then with all that, it's also designed to, as I mentioned, accommodate any future increase of flows with climate change. And what we will use is Fish and Wildlife and UW Climate Impact Group's recommendations, and looking at the year 2100 anticipated flows. So another important part of the project is restoring habitat. And what we're talking about is largely the habitat next to the creek and also in the creek. So we'll be removing a lot of the invasive plants. And the top photo is what's existing on one of the slopes, so a lot of non-native and invasive vegetation. What we're native plants, a healthy understory, and then, so northwest creeks and rivers tend to have a lot of fallen trees in them, so reintroducing that cycle of where it's a more natural environment for the creek. One of the ways that we do that is by installing larger materials in the project. So on the next slide, we're showing plantings that will provide a habitat that will shade the stream corridor and also provide food for fish. We'll have some larger trees that we plant to kind of help jumpstart the succession process. And then for the creek itself, we'll be putting in gravels that are good for salmon spawning, as well as large woody material, so basically fallen trees with the roots still intact. And what that does is provide a very complex creek corridor. Usually around the end of those large woody material, there will be a scour pool developed, and we will be constructing some pools for fish. Those are great spots for refuge, for hiding, and rescue for the fish. Let's see what's next. So this is where I'm going to turn it over to Deb, our arborist, to talk a little bit more about trees and impacts to trees. Thanks, Tracy.
Let me know if my microphone.
You're holding really close to your mouth.
Okay. Deb Powers, senior arborist at Facet, and I just wanted to go from what we were talking about, recreating habitat, that ecology to the forest ecology here, in a couple different ways. Both it's an ecosystem that trees form on the slopes, but then there's the individual trees as well. So in looking at the trees, we did an inventory, actually Facet inventory all the trees in this area back in 2017, and then we re-inventoried them again last fall. And we collect information on the individual trees, and that's the condition, the age, the size, the trunk diameter, the species characteristics for its life cycle. We also are looking at its proximity to structures, and there's any characteristics like lean and defects. just by the nature of the kind of species that they are, the leaf maple and alder, they're relatively short-lived, and they're meant to have a shorter life cycle so that they can establish certain benefits in a riparian area like this. But they're dying out, they're declining, and there hasn't been the opportunity for that conifer succession here. So that's when Tracy was referring to jump-starting this restoration or this area. So there's both the individual trees that we're looking at, and then there's this complex ecological functions that are not, being disrupted or interrupted in this forest ecosystem. So we can go to the next slide. And urban foresters are looking at all of these when we're considering, looking at decisions of should we retain a tree or should we remove a tree. And those decisions here are really complex because of the codes and because of the ecological functions that we're trying to keep intact, and the succession as well. So the primary driver of all of this is obviously the culvert design and the construction impacts. When we are looking at, hey, can this tree, when we're looking at the design, can this tree withstand the construction impacts for this wing wall to be installed or this footing to be excavated here? We don't want to just be able to have it survive construction. We want it to thrive because we're talking about the forest succession that's 5, 10, 20 years from now, and 2 years is how we're thinking of it. But here in this ecosystem, or in this, as far as all functioning, it's not, we're not thinking of, one thing that is log everything and start over, because each one of the trees, even if it cannot be, even if it's so impacted from the construction that it would not
as Deb just said, we're planning to monitor the site for a number of years after it's built. But then we also do need to have access, safe access for the crews. Because even though we think maintenance will be a lot less frequent, they still need to do good, safe access. So we're planning to build new concrete stairs with railings built to current standards. The pictures that you see there on the upper right, it's a little bit cut off, but that's the existing stairs that Jonathan mentioned earlier. So they're quite steep, they're not very safe feeling. And then the lower left is just a sample photo of typical stairs that we'll have. That'll provide good, safe access for the crews. We're planning to put a staircase like this, we're planning to on both sides of the culvert, so upstream and downstream. Both of them will be behind lock gates, like that one is now. So we'll have fence on both sides of the right of way, including public access. So, we'll go to the next slide. Just to say a few words about the public amenities zone. So on the west side of 45th, one of the opportunities that we heard as a good idea was to put in a small public amenities zone. This, if you were involved in any of the earlier outreach activities or any of the drop-in events, you may recall that at one point we called it the overlook. In response to the surveys that we did and some of the public events we did, we heard, we heard mixed reviews. Some people loved the idea, but immediate neighbors were in favor of more screening. So we pulled back the design. It's going to be on the, as I said, on the west side. So there's a couple of pictures, especially the one on the right is looking north on the west side of the street. And then if you go to the next one, there's an artist rendering of what the vision is for the new gathering spot. So it's much smaller than in previous renderings. And then we have a ornamental fence, again, precluding access down that slope, and also providing screening for the neighboring residents. But it'll have some perforations, so you can get boom views down into the creek system and kind of increase, one of the things we want to do is increase the public's knowledge that there is a salmon river stream right under where they're standing. So some of the things incorporated in this design are a decorative pavement showing kind of a creek theme. We have boulders, plantings, educational sign, the fence, and then the gate. And we're working with Seattle City Light to add in another street light there, a lower street light, not as high as the typical ones, but just to help light that area, but not overlight the adjacent windows. And then finally, that is where the 3 parking spots are now. Those are SDOT parking spots. And so we work with SDOT, who really encouraged us to take those out. So it will be consistent sidewalk, won't have a driveway there anymore, so that was a benefit for pedestrian safety. And then it allows us to put 3 new parking spots on the curb, so no net loss of parking for the finished conditions. Let's go to the next one. Wanted to talk a little bit about anticipated construction impacts. We know there will be impacts to the community. And we've been working hard to figure out ways to lessen those impacts. Let's go to the next slide. So again, just to reorientate again, we're here at the Fauntleroy Hall. things that we know is that we have kind of a very constrained site. So we'll go to the next slide. It's a pretty tight space. We've got buildings on all four sides, a road, parking lots, utilities, especially where power is a concern. And then the soil conditions are such that they're actually really poor soils down the bottom of the ravine. So we do need to do top-down construction, so start at the roadway surface and dig down. So that is going to require some pretty significant structural shoring in order to hold it up and protect adjacent buildings, parking lots, roadway. The culvert right now is about 25 feet below the roadway, so it's going to be a big trench. It's a big structural project with a little creek in the bottom. Because of the depth of construction, we actually need some pretty big equipment there. So that is going to require us to take out some utilities. Most notably, I think, is probably the overhead power. So we'll have a crane on site and some large drill rigs to put in the shoring. And it's just not safe for the contractors to operate those machines with overhead power in the way. So that'll be one of the first steps. I'm just going to kind of run through what we anticipate for construction sequencing. Given the site constraints, there's not too many different ways to do this project, but the contractor, once they are hired, they will have some flexibility in how they execute the project. But this is what we are anticipating. So relocating utilities. Again, the overhead power is the big one. That could start as early as late this year or early in 2026. We also have a little bit of water main to relocate that's in the street now. Next step would be to install environmental protection measures. So tree protection fences, erosion control measures, and then fish protection measures. So while we're doing construction, we need to bypass the creek. So what that looks like is installing pumps and flow diversion upstream, probably with sandbags or copper dams, fish screens, and then pump the water around the roadway embankment and down to the other side. Yeah. So on both ends, we'll have facilities to protect against erosion and to protect any fish that may be there. Next step then is to start on the shoring system. That will be a big effort with large drill rigs and structural shoring, so somewhere in the order of up to, I think, 32-inch diameter piles. Those will be done from the roadway elevation and then down the slopes as well. And once all that shoring is in place, then we can start excavating. When we get down to the stream grade, where the new culvert will be, we'll start building the culvert, and it will be a reinforced concrete culvert with precast slabs for the lid. And then building the stream channel within the culvert and then tying it into the open channel area so that it's all well connected and a good meander and guess what? Resilient stream channel. Once all of that is stabilized, the contractor can introduce the stream back into the culvert. Plantings may happen at that time. The plantings will have to be a little bit flexible because there's an optimal time, an optimal season in which to plant them. So that's something that's going to be a little bit in the control of the contractor in terms of seeds. But then there's doing the excavation, rebuilding everything, the street, the sidewalks, the parking lots, and we expect most of that to end up looking much like it does today. And then, let's see, and then building the landing, doing fences, the gates, the stairs, and, yeah, like I said, restoration plans might come at the end, they might come in the middle, and whatever's best for parents. So let's go to the next one. We know that this will be impactful to the community, and we have been really working hard to minimize those impacts. However, it's a big construction project in a tight area, so there will be impacts. We've been working with ESTA to work through traffic impacts, recognizing that we are going to need to close 45th Avenue to vehicular traffic for probably close to 2 years. We've been working with ESTA to come up with detour routes. You all probably know that just off the northeast corner of this building, Director Street is one way right now. So one of the things that ESTA has asked us to do is temporarily, for the construction period, turn that into a two-way travel, and then restore it to the existing conditions when we're done with this project. So we know that will be hard on the community, and that's one of the reasons we're trying to get the word out. We're focused on that. The intersection, the other thing that SP or SDOT has asked us to do is put in an all-way stop right here at the corner to help improve safety. And then just a note, we're going to provide pedestrian detour access through the site as much as we can, as much as it is safe. But we're still planning to work with the community on alternate detour routes for times when that won't be safe. And then finally, we're not impacting the bus routes or bus stops with this project. And then let's see, we have another one. So yeah, I've already touched on some of these other impacts besides the traffic, but there may be intermittent utility outages as things are switched over, but those will be communicated with the affected residents in coordinated weeks in advance. And then, there will be dust, light, noise, vibration, everything that goes with a pretty big civil engineering and construction project. Anyway, I guess with that, then I'll turn it back over to Jonathan.
Thank you, Tracy. So just touch really quick on our next steps before we open up to questions. So Amy, can we move to the next slide? So I mentioned at the beginning, we're in the process of finalizing our design. We're continuing to coordinate with all the permitting agencies that we get permits from, both environmental and stop with the street modifications. That second bullet point, and we're also continuing to have these types of conversations as well as one-on-one conversations with the directly impacted property owners around our project site. And then our crews will continue to monitor the existing culvert, both for blockages and also just to monitor pressure condition. With that, I think we could open it up to questions. And there's my contact information if you want to follow up. If you think of a question later, please feel free to reach out. And Judy.
Well, obviously, Jonathan, I have a lot of comments and questions. I'm well aware that we've already used up the time this evening. When do you expect to get back to the communities with a full-blown community outreach meeting?
July or August is what we're looking at. So we were initially thinking about probably doing another tabling event like we've done in the past, but I also appreciate this format as well. So I think we would, coordinate with David and with Frank and see if we can come back maybe in July or August.
Yeah, the tabling, I think, is inadequate it reaches the immediate neighbors, but the whole community will be impacted by this project. And I encourage you to get back to this room with a lot more chairs set up for the full review of your design and your process.
Yeah. And I should be careful to say, we are, a lot of the stuff that's in design is dictated by those state and federal regulations.
Yeah, well aware of that.
But yes, certainly,
But
yeah.
you have options, we have comments.
Fair, yes, of course. I'll go to Phil first.
Yeah, just a question on the Director California Avenue Barton intersection.
Yeah.
A four-way stop is going to be run through a lot. I think it needs to be a stop light, probably triggered, normally green for the main arterial, but triggered by cars on Director. The reason it's one way is that it became a real accident-prone area.
Yeah.
I really encourage that we put a stop light, not a four-way stop, because people run this four-way stop here that's been there forever.
Yeah.
People, even though that is one way, people just come roaring down that thing the opposite way anyway.
Yeah.
So, we're gonna have to do more than just a stop sign.
Just the floral stuff. Yeah, we'll share that feedback with the Department of Transportation. Ultimately, it's them that kind of dictates what they are asking for that. It's not hand up here first.
Yes. Okay, I live right in the line of all of this, and I'm super supportive of the project. I'm a former fourth grade teacher, did the salmon habitat and all of that. But I live across from Wildwood. Our parking lot is where the gate is that goes down already. I mean, from hearing you talk, I wouldn't even be able to get near my place with groceries and stuff. I mean, this is a big deal for us that live there. But if I have to park my car 2 or 3 blocks away, closing my street, help, I don't know what to ask you. I'm really overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I'm talking my practical day-to-day life at my neighbors. Getting in and out of our apartment, not being able to access our vehicles. Coming home grocery shopping with 4 bags of groceries and not being able to even pull up to unload a car. This is a big deal, because this is our day-to-day life.
Yes, we recognize that will be a huge impact. We do anticipate, we can go back to the slide that shows the construction impacts. There will be an impact to your situation, and there's no way that I can kind of sugarcoat that, unfortunately.
I'm not asking for that. I
Yeah.
just want to know how I can have a normal getting even in and out of my apartment complex.
Yeah, so it's hard to see on this image, but we expect the 45th to be closed, from the Wildwood intersection almost all the way to the Director. It will be open for local access. Now, we'll still have an issue of, we won't be able to get into the parking lot, but we can continue to work with our team and probably put some information in our contract documents about having the contractor help coordinate access as much as possible. I don't know, Tracy, do you have any other thoughts on that front?
I guess the only other thing is we've been talking with Department of Transportation to try to get more short-term parking spots put in the immediate vicinity during the construction. So, but I realize that doesn't.
Well, no, I mean, the whole street's closed and everything's there.
Local access.
But, well, not for parking, no.
Or maybe you guys could issue permits for the residents so that you kind of priority
Yeah.
park there so other people don't,
Yeah.
take those spots.
I mean, I love Wildwood and I'm so happy they're there, but already you're competing with ferry traffic, their business, which is great, but it's just, yeah, we have to have some local access. We absolutely do. Like I said, even if it's just needing to drop something off at your front door. You know? Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't mean to take up the whole thing.
No, it's-
This is really kind of overwhelming. And it doesn't help for you to talk to the owner of our apartment who does not live anywhere near. I'm happy to go back and share with our on-site person who's our manager, but we need to be listened to just, and I've gone to other things and heard some of this stuff, but just knowing our street's gonna be closed, and I tried to get some people to come tonight, but it's a beautiful night like this. And I'll be the squeaky wheel.
No, it's completely valid concerns that you appreciate you bringing those up. It's something we've been thinking a lot about. You know, like for example, like someone brought the idea, like SDOT has told us that we cannot basically dictate who can park where in the public right of way. I mean, that was our first thought, is that we just have a portion of this for the residents.
Well, we have resident permits.
Jonathan, you have not mentioned a fish window. Are you planning for these conditions to go year-round or only during the 3-month fish window?
We have gotten approval from the Department of Fish and Wildlife to construct, once we get the creek in bypass, we can do our construction year-round. We showed them, we did an analysis where we had this follow the fish window. It's likely a 3-year construction project, but if we can get the creek in bypass, they have certain conditions that they apply to that, like we need to plant with higher flows for bypass, we need to have really, beefy erosion control measures downstream for that bypass, that they can recognize it's currently a fish barrier, it's in the best interest to get that construction done as quickly as possible.
So our smolts would still be able to get through?
Well, that's where we would be doing, the fish exclusion. I mean, I think it's worth it having a conversation, is it still, appropriate to do the smolts for those 2 years, or do we want to look at a different location? I mean, it's,
I'm sorry that I've done my job. We have smolts every year. And we don't want to kill them.
no, we don't either, yeah.
And we have research to continue every year with those fish. So they've got to be able to get through. Got to.
So the way that we would, I guess, do that would be to physically move them around.
We need to have a separate
We
conversation.
need a separate conversation about that, so you understand how we're doing it now and then see what you folks might add.
Sure, yeah, I appreciate that.
But I don't see why you can't have a temporary access to that parking lot under the apartments as part of the construction. And there's,
That was one of the things I was going to bring up, is you could write that in the contract, that you have to have, access to these granted. You haven't dictated means and methods yet, let the contractors figure out how they're going to do it.
Right.
Dictate the situation to them. This is a huge impact to this neighborhood, and just to make it easier for the contractor, I realize that's going to make it cheaper, probably make it faster, all those other things, but this is going to be a problem you're going to have to figure out.
Yeah, well, and there's also just more of a physical location of where the culvert is itself. Like the creek right now flips under that existing parking lot, and that's kind of where it needs to go back, so.
But access and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think definitely. Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, I was happy.
Yeah.
So I used to actually live in the apartments right above Wildwood, and then I moved kitty corner across
Yeah.
the street to the blue townhouses now. So I do know there is another access on the other side of the building, so you could still access it, but the parking is the issue, I think. Because you can access from the other side, there is a gate there, where the mailboxes are. Yeah, it's not convenient to park your car if you can't get in there. But I did want to make a comment about the trees.
Oh.
So there has been some movement on the trees since probably the surveys.
Yeah.
One basically fell down on top of another one, which is kind of nearby the senior home. Another's, completely fell over and went over to the other side and is across the creek. Are you aware of those?
Yeah, we were honestly, the 3 of us were just out there 2 weeks ago looking at
Okay.
that area. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything specific to speak to on that.
actually really hard to get down that hill. You got like even like a septic right there. So yeah, there's all these things there, and I do see like when there's heavy rain that could be pose an issue, that there could be a safety issue going down that hill for us and for you for that matter.
Yeah,
And
so,
that is a concern for us as well.
yeah, we're planning for maintenance access stairs on
Okay.
both sides.
Okay.
So I've got a couple more questions. if I could.
Oh, yeah.
So one, in ferry dock construction is coming up, is this project could possibly overlap, is there any allowance or thought, are you talking about that stuff?
Yeah, the way it works is the intersection word for that, in my understanding, could be happening, like the intersection improvements could be happening this fall. Oh, sorry about that. The intersection improvements could be happening this fall for the ferry dock, but it looks like the major construction, they said design and construction between 2027 and 2029. So it's likely more that, Stephen has identified that project and ferries as a state development.
One other question was to the ladies, the restoration work, which you guys were talking, show pictures of, hay bales and all kinds of work done on the slope. Is that going to happen between the culverts? We haven't heard anything about the California either. So I don't know if that's going to be another night or what. The two projects and then downstream of the 45th culvert all the way to the fish ladder by Jimmy's house. Is that repairing and repair work going to take place all the way down, just right at the mountain at the tail?
For our project, we're looking at going about 100 to 150 feet upstream and downstream, kind of just to make as much as anything to make the channel grades work out, where it's a pretty steep stream channel until it gets to the culvert and it really flattens out and it's steep again. So that's why there's that 3-foot drop.
Yeah.
Hi, I apologize, I was quite late, so I apologize if this is redundant. But I represent the board of directors. I'm the president of the FCSA. We own this property.
Oh.
And I want to better understand the impact to our actual, the lines that we own, because the children who are part of the child care center access these back fields. We have a number of tenants that use the back lot, and I want to better understand the impact of this huge property.
Okay. Yes, and we have been talking with a few folks, like, Denise Wallace.
She resigned, so if you
Oh.
could repeat, because
Sure,
I
yeah,
don't have the
so-
information.
Yeah, no, okay. So we've had some conversations around potentially using a portion of the back parking lot and the Seattle Public Schools parcels that are currently being leased by the West Seattle District. So we're having those individual conversations we can do into those about installing a separate driveway access and putting up fencing so it's just strictly for the contractor and they can likely do their job shack, contractor parking and things like that. Just looking for any ways we can relieve the impact to the right of way. But that's subject to approval by property owners. So that would be one of the most direct impacts. And then as we look to the slope on where the creek is, we have some grading impacts that would touch the parcel as well. So it would be rustling and easements for that.
And we had an arborist out, and so we know that there's some dead maple trees that are right off of our property, so they're in that ECA.
Yeah.
And so would you be addressing that as part of the scope of the project as well?
Yeah, I mean, kind of going back to what Deb was speaking on, we are definitely looking at all the trees in and around the footprint of our project and making that assessment. So I know there are certain trees around on that slope, so it's perhaps the same ones that you're talking about.
Yeah, and you have engaged with Seattle Public Schools already?
Yeah, we've had meetings with, Denise and Reed and Matt Hagerty and Marcia from West Seattle Nursery and Lewis Carlson from Seattle Public Schools.
Okay, yeah, I apologize, everybody. I'm catching up, but I think the net is if you can bring the SCSA as the property owner into the conversation. Obviously Denise resigned, so that's no longer your contact, and I think what we would want to do is make sure that there is a little bit of a give-get between us losing access to some of our tenants and our families that attend the child care center, as well as the schoolhouse, if you're taking up that space. But if we can help with bringing some of that over, we'd absolutely want to support the community. So I would love any and all ideas. It's a big lot, and see what we could do.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't know how we're doing on time.
You got a few more minutes.
Okay, I'll go, I saw a question here.
Is the 45th closure, is that all the way from Wildwood to Director, and how long will that be?
It will be closed for local access only from Wildwood to Director, so meaning like residents.
For the public access?
Yeah.
So, say it again.
So we want it to be open for local access in terms of the residents that live on 45th, that will still be able to get to their properties. Your apartment is going to be the most impacted, so we've been thinking about that, we'll continue.
Thinking about moving.
I hope it doesn't come to that.
So it'll be, how long will that be?
Up to 2 years.
What about pedestrian access through there?
So the,
This isn't written or anything, pedestrian access.
yeah, where it's, there will be times when it's not safe to maintain, but we'll try to maintain it as much as we can. Some question here.
So what's the church parking lot gonna look like?
Ooh, that's for Steven's presentation. So that's the California project right now. I'm just talking about 45th. Do you want to go to that one after we take one more?
We don't have time to go with that now.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. This is good questions.
I don't mean this to sound trite with other people's real issues here, but Bill mentioned pedestrian access. This is going to be a fascinating project during its construction in the neighborhood. And I'd like you to consider how you can allow pedestrians to actually get to some viewpoints during construction, because everyone's going to want to see what is happening in this hole in the street. So if you could take that into consideration, particularly with the contractors, whether they allow people to get close to an edge, but people are going to want to know what's happening in the hole. And I think it's a great educational opportunity for you all and everyone else involved to be able to explain this to the communities and let them observe what's going on. We already have kids that are putting the fry in the screening area, and they're gonna want to know.
So we would not, no. We have 700 to 800 children. We would not put them close to big, heavy equipment, no matter how fascinating they are. No.
We'll want to look to see what's there. Okay.
And that's actually how I
This is a real left turn, but how are you going to prevent people from setting up homes in the culvert?
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Public safety.
Yeah, so a couple ways that we try to approach that. Well, one is we are putting block gate accesses at the top of the slope to prevent the public or anybody else from getting on those stairs. We've actually done a site walk with the police department to kind of look at ways that we can engineer and just kind of discourage those types of uses through things like wayfinding, providing better lighting. And part of that also is encouraging everybody to report stuff if they see anything. So it's something, the more we can stay on top of it and kind of discourage that type of activity, then it kind of deters that. So I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer. It's something we've been thinking about. We don't want it to be open to the public to get down there, but in some respects, people are going to go where they want to go, and how do we kind of respond to that?
One more question or two more, and that's about it.
I'll go back.
Yeah, just regarding closing of 45th, is it possible that we could have foot traffic?
Yes. Yeah, what we're envisioning is that there will be a pedestrian bridge that goes over the excavation. There will just be times when, depending on what the construction activity is, that it won't be safe to use that.
Okay, great. That's
That's our question.
buildings that are right, when the culvert goes between them, Alpine and where she is, and Wildwood, there are 37 apartments in those two buildings. And I think you need to keep that in mind, because that's not like having a house next door.
Yeah. No, absolutely, yeah. So like for the end of the line apartments, we're looking at trying to punch in another driveway so they can still get access to the parking infrastructure. Things
That's
like,
a lot of people.
yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm certainly aware of that.
I think that's a good idea. That's what I was thinking. If you have a driveway that would go in before the area is now, that might allow people to still get in.
Yeah. Yeah, we're also looking at, seeing if we can spread another area on Wildwood for like more like a 20 to 30 minute load on loads, help with the Wildwood market, and continue to have people be able to drop in and out, and what are adjustments that we can make within reason that can, it's gonna be a very impactful project, there's really no getting around that.
I just want to qualify something. You said that, okay, like, for people that take the bus, there's not going to be an impact to the bus route, right?
Correct.
Okay, so but you get off the bus and you live on 45th, are we going to be able to walk from the bus?
Yeah, and that's where, we'll have that pedestrian bridge.
But you said it
Under
will
most-
always be open.
Under most cases, but yeah, there will be times when we'll be open, so that's where we are open, so we want to talk through, like, what are our
Okay,
alternatives?
I'm happy to be constructive about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I want my voice.
And definitely, we want to hear it as well, yes.
Okay.
We've been thinking, trying to think through this a lot, and so, we would want to go over some
Okay.
suggestions.
Thank you.
So we're about at the end of the time. Do you guys have cards you can leave for people that have questions so we get in contact with you? Because just, we'll get hold of you then.
Yeah.
Doesn't always work.
Yeah, absolutely, I can leave all these some cards on the table out there.
Okay.
So,
So please do grab some cards if you want to follow up with anything. I'd like to thank these guys for coming out. I will echo, I doubt much of any of this that we heard tonight is what we wanted to hear, because this is going to be a real mess in this community. But they have a project to do, they need